Welcome to another episode of Chax Chat. Join Chad Chilius and me, Dax Castro, where each week we wax poetic about document accessibility topics, tips, and the struggle of remediation and compliance. So sit back, grab your favorite mug of whatever, and let's get started.
Welcome, everyone. Today's podcast is sponsored by Venngage. Venngage is a design platform that's not just about creating stunning visuals, but also about inclusivity and accessibility. Venngage doesn't just simplify your design process, but it takes it up a notch higher with built-in accessibility features. Whether you're looking to run an accessibility check on your designs or export them in the PDF UA format, Venngage has you covered. So head on over to venngage.com, that's VENNGAGE.com, and check them out. My name is Chad Chilius. I'm an Adobe certified instructor as well as director of training solutions and principal at Chax Training and Consulting.
And my name is Dax Castro. I am director of media productions here at Chax Training and Consulting, and Chad and I are both certified as accessible document specialists. And if you'd like your certification, head on over to accessibilityassociation.org/certification and get more information. How you doing, Chad?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. We are at the end of the year, man. It is crazy how the time flies.
It really is. It really is. You know, you and I talked about, kind of like mellowing out a little bit towards the end of the year. But I got to tell you, my calendar keeps getting filled up, man.
Yeah.
Like things keep popping up. So, but anyway, it's, it's great to see, the Christmas lights out, everybody's decorated and it's just a great time of year. Really makes you appreciate everything.
Agreed. And, looking back on the year between you and I really do see how appreciative I am, or I recognize that we have had a lot of success this last year. In fact, we have just really smashed all ideas and records of what we thought was going to happen for this year. As far from a business perspective and from a outreach perspective, we have just really received an overwhelming response of people who have passed their ADS or are part of the group or have had clients. I was at Adobe Max and he was the assistant to the mayor of New York, ran me down on the street and said, Dax, stop me.
Wow.
And I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. And then he says, I just want you to know that we took your class last year and that affected change in the policies of the city of New York for accessibility. And we really appreciate you. I was just so flattered and blown away.
That's great. So, that's really great.
Yeah.
That's what makes you want to keep going. You know what I mean? Like when you hear that from people and people, appreciate and enjoy what you do, it really, it's what kind of keeps me waking up every morning and pressing forward. So really good stuff.
We meet some amazing people. And, speaking of meeting people, we were at Access U this last year and met some amazing people. And I see you're wearing a shirt and I have a shirt and they both say Tammin on them. And I think we're close enough to the end of the year that we could probably make this announcement for those of you who are on the podcast. You're going to get exclusive news, right? So Chad and I were approached at Access U by Marty Malloy, and who was one of the leaders at Tammin, and asked if we were ever interested in getting any investors. And we both kind of shook our head and said, no, not really. And then as we started thinking about it, we just had some thoughts and thought maybe we should revisit this. And after more conversations and a couple trips out to Pennsylvania, Chad and I have decided that we are going to stay Chax Training and Consulting, but we are now going to be part of the Tammin family. And so our company is now going to be owned, I guess, by Tammin Inc. as of January 1. And we couldn't be happier, right, Chad?
Yeah. I mean, the group at Tammin, as you and I have discovered, has such an amazing culture.
Yeah.
Everybody we meet, a lot of times when you start with a new company, not that I've done this very often, but a lot of times when you start with a new company, somebody will walk up to you and be like, oh yeah, this is, and they'll kind of like complain about, something about the company or whatever it might be. And we had none of that. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, like everybody was just so amazing. And I just really think, I really think we made a really good choice to kind of join forces with another company that has the same values that we do, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
that was a big one because, you and I had a previous foray at another company where the values were not where we needed them to be. And so that was a big factor for me, with this new endeavor, was just going to work for a company that had the same values and the same ethics, that you and I did. And I think we succeeded,
Agreed, and that previous company is now bankrupt, and
Yeah.
without mentioning any names,
Yeah.
so I mean it is, and we move on. We make decisions,
Yeah.
we move
Yeah.
on, and life is fine. And I wish them all the best, but we could not have made a better decision. Not only to move and start our own thing, which has been a phenomenal success this year, but
Yeah.
moving on to this new chapter in our lives. It's going to allow us to do more things. We have exciting news that we get to work on this app that we have been uh,
Yeah.
been batting around for the last year. And so, for those of you that are interested, be stay tuned, because it just a couple more months we're going to be releasing something that's pretty amazing,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to share that with all of you. But here we are, it is 7 minutes into the podcast and we have not talked about accessibility. So for those of you who are listening going, what the heck are they jabbering on about, what's the topic today? The topic today is the top 10 things that newbies ask when they first start doing accessibility. We thought this will be a great opportunity to kind of address very quickly at a very high level some of the questions or things or thought processes that people, or assumptions, I guess would be the best way to say it, that people have when they first start doing accessibility. And so, Chad and I took some time to jot down the ones that we see the most. But if you've got ones that you think people are
Yeah.
listening to, put them in the comments below. If you're, this will be posted on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and let us know if you've got other ones that you think are ones that we missed, and we might do a follow-up podcast. So
Yeah. Yeah, for
awesome.
sure.
So the first one is, do span tags matter? Right? This is the
Yeah.
one we get all the time. I cannot tell you how many times people have said, I am so tired of deleting all of these span tags and removing them. It's such a frustration. And the answer to the question is, why the heck are you spending any time touching
Yeah.
span tags, right? Because, Chad?
They're not voiced, right?
Yeah,
Span
they don't
tags are not
matter.
voiced, and you and I have run into many people who, through misinformation, have been going through their document and cleaning up those span tags, like
Yeah.
moving the content out of the span tag and deleting those empty span tags. And that's always a hard thing to say to people. Why are you wasting your time doing
Yeah.
that? You know,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Um,
the reality of why span tags are created in the first place is, if you assign a property that isn't tied to a style, right? A style is our primary way of telling a piece of text what it is, how it's formatted, what its spacing is, what its kerning is, how bold or italic or whatever the case is. It's assigned in the style. But when you break from that and you apply something manually, maybe you just have a paragraph, you want a little more space between it and the next heading, or you italicize a word, or you underline something, any of that will trigger a span tag, because the piece of text has to have a container to hold the instructions to make that adjustment. Now, once it's burned and baked into a PDF, it doesn't matter anymore, because it's now embedded into that content. So once you remove it from the span tag, you really aren't losing anything, but that's why they're there. And then we use them in PDFs to do things like actual text or alt
Yep.
text or
Expansion
encoding.
text.
Yeah, or a language, right? If you want to make a
Yeah.
word
Yeah.
or a phrase a language, you put it in a span. So they have a purpose,
Yeah.
but they really don't need to be there. You could spend your time removing them, but like you said, Chad, it's a waste of time. You should not be doing it unless
They
if you're
tend to be
trying to worry about.
overused. You know,
Yeah.
they tend to be overused, right? And it's the fault of the source application,
Yep.
right? You know, whether it's, you know, this happens in everything, Word, PowerPoint, InDesign, they all do it.
Yep.
And that they're, you know, I mean, fundamentally from an accessibility standpoint, they're not necessary. As a matter of fact, in InDesign a few versions ago, if you recall this, Dax, you know, we would make PDFs and it was riddled with span tags.
Right.
Like it was polluted with span tags. And everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is no good. This is causing." And you know, you and I were like, "Well, it's ugly, but it's not hurting anything, right?
Right.
It's not affecting the accessibility of the file. It's not affecting actually accessibility at any level. But it does kind of look ugly when you're looking at the reading order panel and it's just, as I said, polluted with these span tags, you know? So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
so, you know, that's a good one. It's very common that we get that question. And yeah. So similarly, Dax, the another question that we get is, do container tags matter? Right. So
Yeah.
this is kind of like on the opposite end of the spectrum where span tags are very granular, right? They typically exist inside of a P tag or a heading tag or whatever. Container tags are at like the top level,
Right.
and they're, you know, they could basically be used to group the important tags in a container, right?
Well, I think
And
I think the hope is that someday they will matter. It would be
mhm,
great if I could put all of a sidebar into a part tag or a section tag and then be
yeah,
able to have it be voiced as a sidebar. But the
yeah,
reality is that they really aren't voiced at all. There are some people out there that say that container tags are voiced differently, but I've been using a screen reader for 6-7 years now, and I've yet to hear a screen reader voice anything different from a container tag. It doesn't pause anymore. It doesn't break anything apart. But the idea is that maybe there could be a screen reader out there that could look at a multi-page PDF with several article tags in it and then present that to the user in a different way
mhm,
via a bookmark or a menu system or something like that. So while I want to say currently they don't really matter, they don't have an effect on the end user, maybe someday in the future they might. So
yeah,
I tend not to care so much about section tags. I do use article tags more uh more deliberately, I guess is probably the better word. I'm not going to just put an article tag in, and I'm not going to delete an article tag just to have a clean tags tree if I know that all of the content for an article is in an article tag. But again, it doesn't really have a bearing on the current screen reader user at this current point. So yeah.
no, and I mean, I would argue, to your point, I would argue that currently, um, you know, container tags can be helpful, but they're more helpful to the remediator than they are to the end user.
Agreed.
Because
100%.
I run into a lot of it. Like I personally, I like no container tags. All of my tags are just at the root level of the tags tree. And I know for some people that's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Like they look at that and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how do I know where I am?" You know, but you know, for me, I don't care, and I don't find it confusing. But I do run into people who do, and for those people, if you want to organize your tags by page and put all the tags for a page in its own article, go for it.
So yeah, Chad, and of course, you can use tools like my favorite tool for simplifying the tags tree is Common Look, right? To be able to go into common look, you go up to the root tag, you right click and hit flatten tags tree, and it just nothing, no
Yeah.
section tags, no
Yeah.
nothing. And then I hit apply role map. I think it's actually remove role map. And that actually makes them all H1, H2, standard tags. And so,
Yeah, you just talked about two separate features, right? Like one is
yeah,
remove role map, right? And then the other one is flatten tags tree. Yeah.
right. Because what I don't
Um,
like to see, common look will not apply the role map when you're looking at the tags tree. It is just whatever your style name was in the tags tree. And that's really hard to see, really hard to look at a tags tree and kind of know where you're at. But removing the role map applies standard tags.
the
So
proper
you get
tags. Yeah.
H1, H2 body, P tag and
Yeah.
whatever. And so my first thing whenever I get a document in common look is I open it, go up to the root tag, right click, hit flatten tags, go to the document tag and hit a remove role map. And then it will strip that all down. And that's and sometimes then I just hit save and close and I'll go back into Acrobat and do things like set my hyperlinks or play with my form tags, or, the other things that are kind of a little bit easier outside the program. But to go back to the point here, the point is that removing container tags can be a one-click operation if you're using a tool like Common Look. Other tools make it easier. Access PDF makes it easier, but not as easy. And then, of course, doing it inside Acrobat itself is arduous and can
It's
be
manual.
a huge time suck.
Although to be fair, we always talk about this. I mean, one of the steps that both of us perform when we're evaluating a PDF file is walking the tags tree.
Yep.
Right. And so, barring an incredibly long file, right? Don't get me wrong. If it's 150 pages, I'm not going to do this. But for a lot of documents, I will manually pull the tags out of their container tags in Acrobat, because it allows me to walk the tags tree, verify everything is cool, and then I just say, okay, pull them out, delete the empty tag, and I just kind of walk through it like that.
So using it as like a pre-filter, a pre-sort
yeah,
as you're walking through it, and then you just pull them out as you validate that they're correct. I get that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It's manual, right? But
Yeah.
so is walking the tags tree, right? I mean,
True.
There's no way to automate walking the tags tree. I wish there was, right? But
Well, if I didn't have
do
Common Look to flatten the tags tree, there'd be a lot less of that going on. That's for sure.
Well, and not to digress, but I've also been using Common Look more often lately, especially, right? So InDesign, we've talked about this before. The footnotes in InDesign are broken because it puts a P tag inside of the note tag, right?
Yep.
And with Common Look, I could just say, find any P tag whose parent tag is note and level it up.
Yep.
And like in 3 seconds, it's fixed, and I move on,
Yeah.
So I'm learning, Common Look way better than I do, but I'm starting to leverage Common Look. I really wish I could use Common Look to fix the endnotes, but I don't think I have that level of control for the endnotes.
What would you want to do?
Well, the endnotes are broken right now because there is a link tag in the endnote, but there's nothing in it. What's supposed to be in the link tag is not in the link tag.
So you want to move
a sibling.
That.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think Common Look, and sorry, we're digressing here, and I apologize to our listeners, but like, I don't even know what the command would be, Dax, but I want to find the first span within a tag and put it in the first link tag. I mean, what I mean?
Well,
here's
how you would do it. I think so. What I would do is I would go in and say, use the condition to find the note tag or the link tag that you want, and then say, create a parent tag of this type. And you can do that. But what it doesn't solve is the other things, the empty link tag, and then the spans that you really shouldn't care about anyway. I mean, it makes it cleaner, but the idea is you could create a link tag for the links that aren't in the link tag.
Oh,
and
and then just delete empty link tags.
Exactly.
Is that a command? Delete empty link tags?
Yeah, you can do that. You can search for, well, what will happen is you'll find tags that you do clean up tags tree, and that will delete any tag that doesn't have a content in it. You just go to the very top, right click on the document and hit delete it. It'll say clean up tags. I think it's clean up tags. And then it'll say skip empty TDs inside your tables, which you want to always do. And then it will find any empty link tag and just remove it.
So, well, you and I should talk about this offline and then maybe bring it back in a future podcast.
Sure. Absolutely. Maybe some power tools for common look users. That might be a really good, good podcast.
I like that.
Yeah. All right. So the next one is, how long should my alt text be? And this one is a little ambiguous because we have a standard rule that says it should be 2 to 3 sentences, meaningful, 250 characters or so. I've seen people say as little as 125 characters, which I find a little limiting, especially when I'm trying to convey a complex message.
Hard to put that in a tweet,
Yeah. Well, that's half a tweet. And here's the dirty secret is that the idea of long alt text is no longer the idea that alt text will be cut off at some point, at least by JAWS and NVDA, is no longer a thing. So the idea of limiting alt text is really not a mechanical feature of, hey, if you don't limit this, it's going to stop voicing. It's really a matter of they're going to hear graphic every 25 characters. And so who wants to trying to dissect the information while listening to graphic being repeated over and over again to tell the end user I'm still inside the alt text is a terrible user experience. So still we want to limit it to as little text as we can to adequately describe the meaningful elements of an object or photo or whatever it is, right? That's really the answer.
Yeah. Like the answer is really not a number.
Yes.
Right. The answer is really a philosophy, right?
Exactly.
So, and again, I mean, you and I have said this so many times, I mean, you and I err on the side of the user experience, right? And so,
right.
I try, when I'm writing alternate text, I try to think about like, would I want to listen to all of this text? You know what I mean? Like, is it excessive or is it necessary? And I mean, it's going to be a subjective choice. But I try to, my rule of thumb is make it as concise as I can while still accurately describing, what I'm trying to describe.
Right. And we've got a whole 3-hour class just on writing alt text.
Do.
The secrets of writing effective alt text. In fact, we should probably bring that class back in February. Yeah. We're set for January. For those of you who want to know what classes are coming up, right? So for January, we have document testing with NVDA. That's coming up on January 4th. Yes, January 4th. We have January 11th InDesign. That's you, Chad, InDesign for accessibility best practices. And then January 18th is forms, accessible forms class.
Yep.
And then maybe February we do go back to the secrets of writing effective alt text. It's usually a pretty well attended class. So
it is because we said this before. It's like on paper, writing alternate text seems so simple, right?
Yep.
Until you're sitting in front of your computer, staring at figures, graphics, images, and all of a sudden it's really hard, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's
how
bizarre.
much do you write when you've got a 3-series bar chart or a line graph that doesn't really have a trend or all of these things? We talk about all of them. So, all right. So that was number 3, right?
And
so maybe I think what we're going to do here is probably just do the top 5.
Let's do 5.
And then we'll come back next episode and do another 5. I think that would be
other
great.
5. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Right. So the next one, this is so common, is can I only have one H1 tag?
Right. And we hear this all the time, and it's mostly from IT people who are used to HTML and
but listen, Dax, I just talked with a colleague of mine who is a web developer, and he made me aware that there is nothing anywhere in WCAG that says you can only use one H1 tag.
Yeah.
for web or for documents,
Right.
right?
It
So,
should be a
so
well-structured
yep,
document, and someone's opinion of well-structured says 1H1 at the top and everything scales down below that. And so
yep,
my question there is, um who decided that 1H1, who decided that, right? And in
right.
fact, in the WCAG thing, it actually does say you can have more than 1H1 as long as it's a well-structured document in the WCAG
Oh,
principles.
okay. So I
So
stand corrected. So so
no,
there is
it's set
verbiage in there that talks about it, but nothing says you can only have one H1. It
right.
just says,
It says the
yeah.
opposite. It says you can
Okay.
have more than one H1. It
Excellent.
clarifies. And in fact,
Excellent.
I talked to Andrew Kirkpatrick of Adobe several years ago to get the definitive answer on, can you have more than one H1? And he confirmed that you definitely can.
Yeah.
So what you don't want to do is you don't want to have your heading levels just be assigned by size, right? We see this so many times where you have an H1, an H2, and an H3 all right after each other because there was the title and then there's this subtext
Mm.
underneath the title that's a little bit smaller, but still.
Yeah.
And so they don't understand the idea that a heading is a launch point. It's like an outline, and you
Yeah.
wouldn't have three headings in a row. Typically, you would have heading, content, heading, content, heading, right? I mean, it goes in that direction typically. Right. And so just really question yourself if you find it in your tag tree that you see H1, H1, H2, H3, or, anytime you see consecutive headings in a row, you should stop and really analyze whether that's really what's going on, or
Yeah.
are you just doing it because it's a big piece of text?
I mean, there's a chance that you would, right? I mean, every now and then you may have like a main heading, and then immediately below that you'll have a subheading, right? So then, sure, you would have an H1 and H2, consecutively, but more often than not, and I agree with what you're saying, Dax. More often than not, people simply look at the size of the text to determine if it's a heading or not. And
Mm,
what's really common, especially in print documents, probably on the web too, as you were just explaining, you'll often have a main heading, and then below that is like a paragraph of text that's a little bit bigger than the body text, and that is what I would typically call a deck or a
uh-huh.
declaration, right?
Sure.
It's not really a heading; it's more of like a summary of the article, not really a heading.
I kind of
And
call it a byline, whether that's the right terminology or not. That's kind of typically what comes out of my mouth when I see those. I'm like, oh, it's not a heading, it's a byline, but maybe that's not right.
yeah, like I said, we always called it a deck, but whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter. It's just the point is it's not really a heading.
Right.
It's really, it probably should have a P tag, and then look for your next heading, and then that's what you would want tagged as such. So
Yes.
yeah,
No.
you can, yeah, in most documents, a lot of times the title of the document, right? That'll be an H1. And
Right.
then if your document's divided into chapters, oftentimes the chapter title will be an H1 as well,
Yeah.
right?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. So
No worries there.
cool.
So yeah. And then finally, our last one, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can I delete a tag? Or more, really, a better way to say this is really, what's the difference between deleting and artifacting a tag? Isn't it the same
Yeah.
thing, Chad?
Yeah. And the answer is no, it's not the same thing. Especially when you're doing this in Adobe Acrobat, because um, when you artifact something, you're giving that object the proper designation of an artifact tag. Art and again, when you this is worth explaining. When you artifact something, it technically disappears from the tags tree, but under the hood, what you're doing is you're properly designating that object as an artifact,
Right,
and
because
that's what.
it appears in the content panel. So
Right.
if you go into the content panel and you look, that object's still there, and it will have an artifact designation to the left of it. If
Yeah.
you just delete the tag out of the tags tree and you go look in the content pane,
It remains labeled as what it was. So like if it was a P tag in the content pane, it'll still say it's a P tag. And that's what gets a little bit confusing, because it doesn't, it in the content pane, it still is designated as a P tag or whatever it was. But really what you did, like when you deleted it from the tags tree, you're now creating a new problem, which is untagged content, right?
In fact, this is a problem when I hear people say, I retag something, or I deleted the tag, but then I tagged it as what it's supposed to be, but NVDA is still reading it as a different tag type, like a paragraph. It's not understanding it's a heading. But typically what happened is they're using read aloud or some other not NVDA, and that's going to honor the content pane, whatever that tag was in there, and not really the tag tree. And I know we're getting into the weeds here. We always have this problem where we just kind of go down these rabbit holes.
But there's so much to talk about, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, there's so much.
Well, the idea here, guys, is just to note that PDF UA says you should have no untagged content, that everything should have a designation, artifact or tag. And so if you're trying to pass PDF UA, and I would tell all of you that if you're using the pack checker, regardless of whether you hit that CAG tab or the PDF UA tab, you are checking to the PDF UA standard. If you're using the pack checker, you really should make sure that all your items are tagged. If you're just trying to pass Acrobat, I just want you to know you're at a risk, because Acrobat is not going to hold up in court in any way, shape, or form that you made your document accessible. But if your standard is, I just need to pass the Acrobat checker, then technically you could delete content, and it's not going to cause an error in the Acrobat checker. Just know, though, anybody checking it with the pack checker is not going to get the same results. They're going to see errors all over the place for untagged content.
Yeah. It's certainly challenging, Now, I mean, if you leverage third-party tools, right? So, like I know for me personally, Dax, I no longer artifact tags in Acrobat. I just delete them, because I know in Access PDF, I can click one button that will artifact anything that isn't tagged. Right.
And so Common Look does it automatically.
Common Look does it automatically. Yeah.
So if you did that same thing where you just delete it in Acrobat, knowing that you're going to open it in Common Look, the moment you save Common Look's file, all of those deleted, not tagged content really are set as an artifact. So either way, Access PDF, Common Look, you have very quick ways to take care of all of that. And we would say that the more accessibility you can bake into your PDFs, the less risk you're going to have of getting sued, and the more you can feel confident that even if litigation is not your concern, that you're doing as much as you can to make your documents accessible, which is what we would like to end this podcast with, is that we hope that you have a great holiday, but more than that, we hope that you set some goals for yourself for the new year, that improve yourself by just 1%. We have Jeremy Seta is a great partner, friend of our podcast. And, one of his talks was about improving your position in jiu-jitsu just by 1%. And I will say that he makes that bridge to accessibility. If you can just do 1% better each month, you're going to make substantial changes over the course of a year. So as we move into this new year, we wish all of you the energy and diligence to try to improve yourself, improve your PDF documents, even 1%.
Because we always say some accessibility is better than no accessibility.
Yeah.
Right. And as you learn more, as you start adding things to your repertoire, your documents are going to get better and better,
Yeah.
And, and I will say too, I just had a call with a client today. It's a normal part of your accessibility progression where, people tend to start in Acrobat. Right.
Yep.
and they do as much as they can in Acrobat. But then at a certain point, they've gotten good enough where they start to hit these walls, right? Where they're like, oh man, this is really time consuming and annoying. Isn't there a better way? And at that point is when you want to start looking at third party products, right?
Right.
And I'm not even going to promote a specific one. Just start looking at some third party products, because they will make a huge difference. They're going to save you a lot of time. They're going to save you a lot of frustration, and you're really going to enjoy it. So,
well, and that's
anyway,
a great segue into our sponsor,
yeah.
right? The sponsor of the podcast, which is Vengage, right?
Which we got to see Eugene at Accessing Higher Ground this year. And we had a great time, talking with him, as we always do. He's a great guy, and he's the owner of Engage. And, we just kind of talked to him about his product and how he just kind of took a very different stance on how he was going to build his product. And he built a really amazing tool to help people with accessibility. So, yeah, it's great. And again, we want to thank them for being the sponsor on our podcast, so, please head on over to vengage.com. That's VENNGAGE.com, and take a look at their product. I really think you're going to love it, especially if you're a Canva user. Take a look at Vengage. I think you're going to be really pleased with what it offers from an accessibility standpoint. My name is Chad Chilius.
And my name is Dax Castro, where each week we unravel accessibility for you.
Thanks, guys.